Cauliflower pizza has been a fan favorite on my website for years, and today I'm going to show you 2 shortcuts that will make it even easier to make at home. When I first started making this recipe, cauliflower rice was not something that was easily available at the grocery store, so I had to buy a head of cauliflower, cut it into florets, and then process it into a rice-like texture using my food processor. You can still do that method if you want to, but it's much more convenient if you can find cauliflower rice at the store. This recipe is even faster if you can start with frozen cauliflower. I think the biggest struggle with making cauliflower pizza crust at home is the fact that you have to cook the cauliflower first. Cooking fresh cauliflower is necessary so that you don't wind up with a super soggy pizza crust. But you can skip the cooking step entirely if you start with frozen cauliflower that has been thawed overnight in the fridge. Freezing the cauliflower and then thawing it gives the cauliflower the same texture as if you had cooked it. You'll save even more time if you can start with frozen riced cauliflower. In that case, you won't need to get out your food processor or cook the cauliflower before you get started. Now that we've covered those 2 time-saving steps, let's make the pizza. To make this recipe, you'll need 1 pound of fresh or frozen cauliflower, 1 egg, a 1/3 cup of goat cheese or Parmesan cheese, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. To get started, preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and if you're starting with fresh or frozen cauliflower florets, you'll need to process them into a rice-like texture. You can skip this step if you buy pre-riced cauliflower instead. This type of pizza is the most sturdy when you use only 1 pound of cauliflower, but you can add up to a 1/2 pound more if you want a crust that is slightly larger and packs a few more veggies in each bite. Once it's riced, you'll need to cook the fresh cauliflower. Spread the cauliflower rice onto a lined baking sheet and bake for 15 minutes or until the cauliflower is tender. If you're starting with frozen cauliflower that is already thawed, you can skip this extra cooking step. Once the cauliflower has been cooked or thawed, it's time to squeeze out the moisture. Transfer the cauliflower to a thin dish towel or cheesecloth and then squeeze out as much moisture as you can. If you just cooked the cauliflower, be sure to let it cool until you can safely handle it without burning your hands. That's another perk of using the frozen and thawed cauliflower because it won't be piping hot when you go to squeeze out the moisture. Cauliflower naturally contains a lot of water, so don't be tempted to skip this step unless you don't mind having a soggy pizza crust. As you can see, the cauliflower will shrink down quite a bit after you squeeze it. Transfer the cauliflower to a large bowl and add in 1 egg, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a 1/3 cup of soft goat cheese. If you're not a goat cheese fan, you should know that the flavor is not noticeable in this cauliflower pizza crust, but you can also use a 1/3 cup of grated Parmesan cheese instead. I'm going to bake both versions side by side so you can see how they turn out. If you need an egg-free or dairy-free recipe, be sure to check out my vegan cauliflower pizza crust for the best results. Stir the ingredients together until the batter looks smooth, then line a large baking sheet with parchment paper, which is not to be confused with wax paper, which will stick terribly to your pizza crust. Transfer the cauliflower pizza dough to the center of the parchment paper. This is definitely not like your traditional pizza dough, so you'll need to use your hands to press the cauliflower into a pizza crust shape. You'll want to make this about a 1/4 inch thick, and if you find the dough is sticking to your hands, you can get them wet to help prevent sticking. Once the pizza crust is shaped, you can bake it at 400 degrees for 30 minutes or until the edges start to look golden. Using oven mitts because it's hot, lift the parchment paper and flip the crust over. Bake it for 10 more minutes to make sure the bottom of the crust isn't soggy. If this step intimidates you, you can also just skip flipping it and bake the crust for 10 more minutes. As you can see, the pizza crust is pretty sturdy at this point. To show you the difference between those two types of cheeses, this is the pizza crust that is made with goat cheese, and this is the one made with Parmesan cheese. Now that it's time to add the toppings, be sure to go light on the sauce so your pizza crust doesn't get too wet. Then add any other toppings that you love. Bake the pizza until the cheese is hot and bubbly, about 10 more minutes at 400 degrees. You can turn on your oven's broiler for the last minute or two if you want to speed things along. Now the pizza is ready to slice and serve. If you want to make a double batch of this cauliflower pizza crust, you can freeze the second crust for a convenient meal in the future. I usually cut mine into slices so that they will easily fit in one of my storage containers, and then I can reheat as much or as little as I want to. You can add the toppings directly to the frozen pizza crust and bake at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 to 15 minutes until everything is hot. I hope you'll enjoy this cauliflower pizza crust soon, and if you'd like the printable recipe to save for later, you can grab that over on my website, detoxinista.com. And be sure to check out my other videos here for more fast and easy real food recipes.